Hey, Clemson family, if there are any critics out there of Wes Goodwin still around, you can have a seat because, boy, what a defensive showing we saw against Georgia Tech on Saturday in a big win, at least on the scoreboard.
I'm Daniel Shirley. I'm sitting, dude. Let it go. I know you're talking directly to me. Yes, I am. I have been critical of Wes Goodwin as a defensive coordinator. I've been critical of the tackling. I've been critical of, uh, maybe him being in over his head a little bit. But I can admit when I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. You can ask my wife; she'll tell you. I've been wrong probably 4 times today, and that might be a conservative number. But no, the defense a really strong performance by the defense on Saturday. And I know, look, they gave up 21 points. They gave up 14 of those points and a bunch of yards with a lot of young guys in the game. The defense, when those first teamers were in the game, they'd given up 110 yards or whatever, 120 yards and 7 points.
Right.
The first touchdown is on the special teams and the coaching staff. I'm sorry, that's the fake punt is a terrible call at that point. And Dabo said they called it. I mean, so that's fine. But no, the defense, really impressive performance. And without one of your best players in Barrett Carter and without several guys, depth guys, veteran guys in the secondary. So I think you got to, if you're going to criticize him, you can't criticize him for that performance on Saturday or the one the week before.
And definitely, I'm aiming that more at Crazy Daniel than at Daniel Shirley for sure. I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is season 2 of the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. You can catch all our episodes at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Get in those comments. Tell us where you agree with us. Tell us definitely where you think we're missing the mark. Add to that conversation. Get a bigger perspective in there by helping us out and pointing out some things that we don't get to. Sometimes are even things we agree with. We just, didn't bring them up in the course of conversation on this show. Uh, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that Georgia Tech game, but really let's start putting it in a perspective of what it means toward the end of the season and going into next season, because there's no championship at stake. And in that sense, it wasn't a big win. But as far as getting 4 picks, as far as the defense looking really, really good against the Jackets, who that's a team with Brent Key that is building from the trenches out. That's the way a program really ought to be built, and they may still be lacking a little bit in talent, I would say, is where the gap is. They sure had no quit in them, like you said. They did not stop trying. They did not lay down. Even when Clemson brought in the third stringers, they went out there and fought and took advantage of the youth that Clemson had on the field and made some things happen for themselves. Began to shut down Clemson offensively. With 4 turnovers like happened, and like you said, at the hands of young guys, uh, very much a tough thing for Georgia Tech to handle defensively, and that opened, I think, some things up on offense. Clemson also had to recover a little bit after a very shaky offensive start, very rocky. To me, unexpected after what you saw them accomplish against Notre Dame to take a large step back in that first quarter, but very encouraging to see them rebound from it and start to take over the game. That long touchdown drive that they had, and to finish it with a touchdown, to get some points on the board after what had been a costly turnover on that fake punt, like you mentioned. Dabo said they called it. I didn't see anyone else on the field blocking like a fake punt had been called. So I don't know how the signals got crossed there, or what went wrong with that thing. And to call it that deep in your own territory when you need 9 yards and have a punter running the ball like that with no blocking, just naked bootleg by a punter from that far behind the line, not a great call. But the Tigers answered. That was important, and I think that really started to open the Jackets' eyes as to what they were up against.
Yeah, I think so. And, hats off to our buddy Kevin Selman. He works up in the press box on Saturdays. He told me that was the longest touchdown drive in Clemson football history. The 9-minute 51-yard drive, or 9-minute 51-second drive for a touchdown. Apparently, Clemson had a longer scoring drive, but it was a field goal. So that was the longest for a touchdown in Clemson history. I mean, it was impressive, and it was efficient, and it was, hey, this is what you think this offense can look like. Is it perfect? No. I mean, slow start, We talked about it. We're texting back and forth. The offensive line was not getting any push. There were no holes like there were, for, in the Notre Dame game. But for Phil Mafah in the Notre Dame specifically. But there was getting into that late first quarter, early second quarter period of the game, it felt like they figured some things out. And now it helps that Bo Collins is going to make a great catch on a ball in the corner, and then Tyler Brown makes an unbelievable catch on the other touchdown. I mean, if those two guys don't make those catches, those are field goals, and then you're still losing 7-6. I don't think either one was a great throw, but they were great catches. And then Cade kind of got into the game a little bit, and and had a pretty solid game. I don't think he's going to be, at least at this stage of his career, I don't think he's the guy that's going to come out and throw for 350 yards like Trevor or Deshaun Watson or Taj Boyd or, those guys. So, but if he can be efficient and stay ahead of the chains, right? Don't make bad mistakes. He did have the one pick. That was more of a bad throw than a bad decision. It was behind Briningstool and into the defender. But he can be a really good quarterback in this offense. Now, the touchdown throw to Briningstool was terrific. I mean, it was in a tight window. It was beautiful. But then there's also some swing passes where, the running backs are having to twist their bodies and contort and catch the ball behind them. Or, you've got to be way more precise putting the ball in a spot where they can catch it and run. But I thought he was good. I thought he was efficient. And to me, that's the biggest thing. Efficient with him is the biggest word for me, is when he's ahead of the chains and he's not in scramble mode, although he did have the good third down run that set up a fourth down conversion. If he's not jittery and skittish and his eyes are all over the place, he can be a really good quarterback. But we've seen it when he's not, and it can be problematic. So I thought just a really solid performance after a slow start. Those middle two third quarters, the middle two quarters, the second, third quarter, that's what that offense can look like if they're playing well.
Yep. And I think the bigger thing you and I talked about is down this stretch, how does this team develop things that it can carry into next year? And we talked about, you can't have any X and O momentum. But one of the things we said could develop is leadership. And frankly, although there was a lot of talk in this offseason that Klubnik was really a true leader type on this offense, and more so than DJ Uyunglele, who really trusted people to do their jobs and didn't really want to get in their face or be the rah-rah guy. Just he placed his faith in his teammates and his trust in them to get the job done. Klubnik has more of that leadership intuition, more of that vocal leader kind of approach to the game. You've got to be able to back that up with performance. And the more that he starts to back that up with performance, it gives that credibility to leadership that he's trying to bring in. Certainly on defense, you want to see some leaders emerge as well, because Trotter is headed to the NFL draft. It just makes all the sense in the world for him to go and pursue what he can get. He should be a top half of day one kind of guy. So who's going to be that guy who steps up? Could it be Barrett Carter after pardon me, a subpar junior season? Is it going to be TJ Parker, who came out and proved himself this year? Is it Peter Woods? Is it going to be someone in the secondary? Does Makuba stay another year, and is he a leader? You want to see those things develop, and you want to see someone in the trenches on offense as well develop as a leader in that bunch, because they can kind of tend to be their own group a little bit. And you presumably will have Will Putnam leaving. You hope Walker Parks is kind of there on the sidelines and in the locker room and in the weight room, doing the things that he can do to galvanize a little bit of a leadership role there as well, because they certainly seem to miss him more than I thought they would. Admittedly, it was clear that they would miss him. I'm not saying they wouldn't have, but I think the degree to which his injury has had an effect on this offensive line has been pretty stark and very noticeable. So you hope that he's going to be one of those guys. But these next couple of games, it does need to be a little bit of that. The guys who may be sitting back and letting Trotter, letting Shipley, letting Klubnik be those leaders, maybe they need to escalate their presence in the huddle and their presence on the sideline as well.
Yeah, and it has to be organic. It can't
Mm-hmm.
be forced. I mean, it can't. You can't just walk in the locker room and say I'm the leader. Guys aren't going to follow a player who doesn't perform on the field. I'm sorry, that's the way of a locker room. You can be a veteran leader. Maybe you're not playing as much as you used to, whatever, but you have to have shown you can do the job for guys to follow you. So we'll see. Again, you mentioned some interesting names there of Carter, Makuba. Will they be back? If they're back, I mean, that's another boon for this team. I mean, it's like Tyler Davis and Rukaroro coming back. I think it has that same kind of an impact. But it will be interesting to see. I'd love to see. I think Will Shipley is a leader on the offense. I think that is clear, right? I don't think you can deny that. I think guys follow him. He's had a good year and hasn't had a great year, and we know about the concussion against his state. He got targeted again on Saturday. It wasn't called. That's twice, right. 2 games in a row that he's played that he's been targeted, and it hasn't been called. And you could tell he was frustrated. I don't know how you missed that. And they're supposed to have someone in a referee looking specifically at that on the video to make sure that A, nobody's hurt. You don't want him to go back out if he's hurt. And B, if it's targeting, that player needs to be out of the game. Now, we can debate whether a guy should be ejected for targeting. I think it's a dumb rule, but so I think Shipley's a leader. I think Briningstool has a chance to be a leader. I do. I among that pass catching group, I do think he has a chance to be a leader. He's really stepped up and played really, really well. And you mentioned Peter Woods. I don't know about leader, but I'll tell you who has really caught my eye the last 2 weeks is DeMonte Capehart.
Oh, yeah.
I think he has really taken advantage of his opportunity this year. He is a monster of a man. I mean, he is a huge human being, huge, massive human being. And he has played really, really well. I think Woodaz has a chance to be a leader at some point, during his career. When Trotter leaves, I think Woodaz slides right into that spot, and he's played really well. So, there's guys that are there, and then there's younger guys too who we don't know about. Who's going to be Avieon Terrell could be a leader. He's played really, really well. I mean, I think he's way more of a alpha kind of a leader than a Nate Wiggins is. I think Nate Wiggins is a fine player, but I don't know that he has that in him to be that kind of a leader. I mean, he's going to be a high draft pick. He's talented. He's had a great career. All that's true. But I mean, some guys just aren't that. That's okay. Not everybody can be a leader, right? You can't have a full locker room of leaders. Somebody's got to follow. But I think they've got a chance these last 2 games to really prove that. And I like that Dabo kind of came out and challenged them and said, look, next year there's going to be a 12-team playoff. And what we do these last 2 games and the bowl game really matter. Building up something towards next year. And I think he's absolutely right. And we'll see how they play Saturday. Bill, this team's been so herky-jerky and hit or miss, not with their effort. I know Dabo has pointed that out a lot. They've played hard every week, but being efficient and playing smart and playing precise football, they've been like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So I don't have any idea what to expect going into every game.
That's a great point, and that's something also, maybe one thing I'm thinking you and I didn't talk about it before we started recording, but there really needs to be some leadership evolving among the coaching staff as well. I think that there was, look, from afar, it just appears to me that there's some kind of disconnect that isn't getting these guys to pay attention to the little details, to pay attention to the fundamentals. That's what explains fumbling. That's what explains, I think, more penalties than we've been accustomed to seeing. Although Clemson has still played pretty good penalty-free football for the most part, it seems to happen in bad times and bad situation. But it's not like you're Miami or some other team that's racking up a dozen. I mean, Florida State tends to rack up a lot of penalties too, right? Um,
Be
not
disciplined.
necessarily as
Yeah,
egregious
absolutely.
and ugly penalties like they used to be under previous coaches, but still the penalties are there for Florida State this year. I would like to see, CJ Spiller making sure that guys don't fumble, and if they do, the next guy is in, and if that guy fumbles, then the next guy is in, and who cares if the third guy is a
Yeah,
former walk on? That used to be the approach here at Clemson. I've talked about this before, so I won't go on too long about it, but I think there's a lot of uh, I don't know, I guess there are ways that you have to hesitate on really, really coming down on a guy in the transfer portal era because you could lose him. But I don't think fundamentals ought to be one of those things. I think, they need to know that, hey, if you can't handle me getting on you about this, good luck at a D2 school, because every coach in the Power Five and every coach in the Group Five is going to expect you to handle the fundamentals and protect the football. This team can't lead the NCAA in fumbles lost. And the tackling, you mentioned the tackling. There was suspect tackling again. Does that all come down on Goodwin's shoulders? Not all of it, no, because position coaches have a lot of responsibility in
absolutely.
the technique aspect of coaching the game. So, how does Nick Eason get a guy to bow up like they used to for uh, Hobby and Dan, whose last name I'm blanking on, from the first championship team, retired? Uh, those were coaches that understood how to get that technique into a guy's head, into his body, and have it appear on the field. And I don't think we saw that as much the last couple defensive line coaches. I don't think we see it as much from Lemansky Hall. I think even that last year with Venables as the linebackers coach, we saw some sort of side tackling from the linebackers, right? I'll even see a guy sometimes this year hitting a guy square or almost square and then sort of turning to the side and trying to bring him down that way, and guys are slipping out of tackles in that technique. So how do you get that fixed? I mean, we've seen Nate Wiggins become a much more physical player and a better tackler. What's the secret sauce there, and can we spread that around the rest of the team? So without getting into specifics about this coach or that coach, I just want to mention generally that yeah, the leadership among the coaching ranks has to evolve as well. And I think, frankly, that this young freshman squad uh, can help with that quite a bit. And I think the commits that are coming in next year appear to have that same level of juice and drive and determination. And then more guys with a little bit of that dog in them. I mean, it's awesome that this class has had so many freshmen step up. It also shows there was an opportunity there for a young guy to beat out an established veteran at several spots on the field. Not sure how great that is, but I just hope that it gets rolling better moving forward through these last two games, like you've talked about, and so that is the kind of thing that hopefully can persist in the locker room and be something we see again next year.
Dan Brooks, by the way, is the coach you that your brain froze on there for
Thank
a
you.
second.
Thank you.
He was one of the greatest defensive line coaches in the history of the game. I mean,
Absolutely.
it just was. Look, I think there was it 2 weeks ago you sent me the chain of texts about the recruiting classes and the misses. I think there were some misses in previous classes. I don't think they missed much in that class that just came in.
Right.
That class is having an impact on this team, including a guy like Tyler Brown, who everybody thought was he's just a local throw-in at the end. He might be the freshman of the year in the conference.
Yeah.
And if he's not, I'd love to see who is. But he didn't even have spring ball. He hasn't had a full off season of the workouts and the lifting and all that stuff. So imagine what he's going to be next year, and imagine what they're going to be next year when they have him and Antonio Williams together. And Noble Johnson has a full year, and that these other guys that they've added Right. Stellato, imagine him having another stack a healthy year on another healthy year, right? Yeah. Because he's been a revelation this year. I mean, he's had a really good year for this team. So I think you're right. I think that class, I mean, just look at a guy like Josh Sapp. You know, those guys are helping this team. And now he's going to have to even more within the South. But they've got guys in that younger group, even the redshirt group, that has helped this team this year. I think they hit on those two classes. And then next year's group, or this coming group in December, about a month and a week away when they sign, I think that class is going to help. Now they got to get some more offensive linemen. I know we've talked about that. They've got one offensive lineman in that class. That can't be it. They've got to get some help. But I like what they're building. It feels like, okay, they've had this little blip of 3 lost seasons. This season's even worse. 4 losses, could be more. We've got 3 games left to play. We'll see what the record ends up being. But are we coming out of it a little bit? Are they coming out of that? And is the talent getting back to what Clemson fans have gotten used to? We'll see. But you're right. To your point, it's got to be the coaching. This is a new coaching staff. I don't know how, if you're a Clemson fan, you can't trust Dabo. I mean, I trust my eyes and what he built. And he built, right? He didn't take over Danny Ford's Clemson program. He took over 2 decades of mediocrity, and he built something, and he can rebuild it. But there's got to be some that coaching staff has got to step up, and there's spots there where it feels like either there's got to be a change, or there's got to be some big time improvements by the coaches who were on the staff.
I think the whole team probably needs a little bit of improvement going into North Carolina, a much more talented offense. As much as I think Haynes King has had a good year for Georgia Tech, Drake May is an even superior talent in North Carolina. He's got a better receiver core than the young receivers at Tech that King is throwing to. Defensively, maybe on a par with Tech, maybe a little better, I would say. So Tigers offense, I think, needs to fire from the start of the game and get things right, especially up front in the trenches, and create those opportunities. I think that's really helped Phil Mafah, Will Shipley, Cade Klubnik. I loved Mafah starting, by the way, even though Shipley got more carries. It almost turned Shipley into more of a change of pace kind of back, and I think there was something that was successful about that, if you ask me. So let's see what happens in this game. It's going to be a test. Chip on the shoulder for North Carolina, the whole cliche there. Clemson's got to have its guard up. It's got to be prepared. It's got to be ready. And we will cover all of that in our next episode. And hopefully you have lots more soccer finally to get into. Both teams in the NCAA tournament
Basketball.
right now doing really well. What's basketball? Is that the one where they throw it at the hoop thing? I don't get much into them until ACC play starts, admittedly, and I wish there was some baseball to talk about, but someday we will get there. So until our next episode focused on the North Carolina game, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Hang a banner for the Asheville tournament. Go Tigers.